Alright guys, our investigations of the Infantry Arsenal overhaul that is currently being tested on the public test server continues today. Last time, we spent a lot of time going over the attachments and discussing the new effects they bring, but today, we're going to address what could be argued as the endgame content for Planetside, Directive weapons. Have they become more enjoyable to use, and are they now worth unlocking after these changes in the first place? G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today, welcome to part 2 of many of testing the upcoming Infantry Arsenal overhaul. Now, much like the last video, everything we're going to discuss and show off today is coming from the public test server, which means that it should be taken with a grain of salt as things are subject to change. I don't know exactly how much longer we have until the content hits the live server, but as always, I'm going to put that disclaimer out there just in case. Also, in case you missed it, the PTS got its Phase 2 update for the upcoming update, and within it are a bunch of extra goodies including the new Empire-specific Basilisk weapons, so make sure you check that out. We're going to be doing a video on that soon as well. There was also some additional cleanups applied to the Directive weapons, so I'm glad we waited a tad because, well, the video's a bit more relevant now. Anyway, let's get into things here because once again, we've got a lot to cover. First things first, we have to address some pretty big sweeping changes that have been made to Directive weapons and how they function. For one, they can now equip and customize what attachment options they take into battle. In turn, some Directive weapons have lost their inbuilt attachments that gave them unique stats in the name of creative freedom, but additionally, some have retained some inbuilt attachments for exceptional performance in some areas, especially when you stack an additional attachment on top of the inbuilt attachment. Hell, a lot of the Directive weapons also come with more attachment flexibility over the default cousins, making them sorta better S-class weaponry, to be honest. Now, in addition to that, Directive weapons can now also be equipped as ASP point weapons, so there's some extra flexibility for those who are asking for it coming to their loadouts. When it comes to taking a bit of a deeper dive into each weapon class and weapon individually, we're going to start off here with the assault rifles, because I feel like, to be honest, these have been some pretty big winners out of the addition of attachment flexibility, but they also paved the way for some analysis regarding a certain mechanic and how it's been addressed. The Araxium ARs across the board now all share the ability to mount a unique cure launcher attachment that will fire an underbarrel cure round. For those who aren't familiar with this style of ordnance, it will counter all impairing effects on your character like concussion grenades and flash grenades, and they'll also heal you for a small amount of HP. This is currently, on live, only available on the NS66 Punisher's adaptive underbarrel slot when paired with a combat medic. So it's a neat team-orientated benefit that you can attach to an adaptable AR platform now. I'm sure our more experienced combat medics will appreciate the addition. But the weapons across the board also got some specific changes. We'll start off with the GSS Prime. They removed some of the innate non-velocity HVA, but kept some of the muzzle velocity intact, maintaining at 675 meters per second to be exact. And it kept the integrated forward grip, but removed the integrated compensator. Now, with some attachment combinations, this means that you can now stack an additional high velocity ammunition attachment on top of the weapon's already high muzzle velocity to make it the fastest projectile velocity AR in the game. But you can also stack an additional forward grip to make it a true laser. You can also now mount an angled forward grip, which when you take into consideration the 25% reduction to horizontal recoil that comes from the integrated grip and the 10% increase in horizontal recoil that comes from the angled grip, that means you're still going to get a 15% reduction to horizontal recoil as a net value, and it results in the weapon being a goddamn laser beam despite the slight increase in horizontal recoil. Vertically, especially when you throw on a compensator as well, the weapon just doesn't move. The GSS Prime may actually be a viable weapon now. The Unity also keeps its integrated forward grip, but loses its integrated soft point ammunition sadly. But it's now also the only TR assault rifle in the game capable of equipping the heavy mags in the ammo slot after these updates. This makes it the only TR assault rifle that can have its mag size pushed above 40 rounds. It's pretty nice, has to be said. Again, kind of looking forward to unlocking this weapon and using it on the live server now. Moving on to the Dark Star makes this a great time to talk about the new approach to the heat mechanics for the Vanu Sovereignty weapons. The long and short of it is that there's now a new formula for heat mechanic weaponry that is based off the non-heat counterparts. Adding a heat mechanic now reduces the weapon's magazine size by 20% off the base weapon. Heat recovery is now based on the damage per magazine. Heat bleed off time is now based off of a percentage off of the long reload of the weapon, and the overheat penalties are now just equivalent to the base weapon's long reload time. So that's a lot of potential numbers and formulae to go over, and to be honest, covering it all in this video isn't the place we're going to be doing it. We'd have to go in depth for each and every weapon as to what that means, and quite frankly, I don't feel like doing the math totally here and now. But it does kind of mean, in the long and short, that some of these VS heat-based directive weapons have become incredibly underwhelming against their relative counterparts. The Darkstar, for example, only now sports an effective magazine size of 24 rounds, which is very, very limiting for an AR. You'll need to be making your shots count to successfully engage more than one target in quick succession. The weapon does maintain an integrated compensator and forward grip, making it incredibly accurate, but the heat bleed off rate has been slowed as well. Overall, it's hard to judge because in the VR training room, you are chaining targets without interruption. On live, where people shoot back, that doesn't happen so easily, and it doesn't necessarily happen all the time. So I'll need to see it in action, but I'm not convinced that these new equations don't make the VS Araxiums incredibly underwhelming across the board. More on that shortly. For the Maxwell, aka the NSO Araxium Assault Rifle, there were no changes listed in the patch notes, but it has received attachment flexibility, which makes it feel pretty good here, not much else to say. But okay, you may have thought the ARs looked like a good time. Wait till you've seen the carbines, because I'm personally going to have a lot of fun with these. The carbines across the board all now sport access to an impulse underbarrel grenade launcher. Yeah, light assaults no longer need a Punisher with an adaptive underbarrel to start flinging themselves or opponents off edges of buildings at muck holy fuck. They can do it now with these things too. This is going to be a huge addition to my loadouts personally, as especially on the NC side of things, I really like the default mercenary, so to now have a mercenary that now lets me take impulse nades with me out of the gate, let's just say you have my attention. Now across the board for the NC, VS and TR, the carbines maintained their integrated laser sight and lost their integrated soft point ammunition and maintained a worse muzzle velocity in the process, with the exception of the Eclipse. This makes them incredibly accurate when fired from the hip, which is going to work wonders with the addition of the impulse launchers. The Eclipse can even run unstable ammunition now to go the whole 9 yards of just hip-fire tomfoolery, even though I'm not sure it's the best weapon archetype for it, primarily coming from the damage model and again the limitations that the heat mechanic brings here as well, once again resulting in a 24 effective round magazine much like its AR-based cousin. Regardless, if you want to opt for a more accurate build on the carbines, you most certainly can. With the Fortuna, for example, having access to the heavy barrel and the forward grip makes it a very competent ranged option. Like seriously, this thing is extremely easy to control. Hell, even the track shot with its new non-laser sight attachment options makes it a very adaptable mid-range carbine. Even lets you turn into a more accurate version of the Track 5. I have to say, with the expanded attachment options we are seeing here on these directive weapons, I gotta be honest, I'm just seeing a lack of a reason to use the default weapons once you've unlocked the Araxium weapons for the most part, to be honest. The Newton, aka the NSO's Arax carbine, from what I could tell didn't get much in the way of actual changes, but it did get access to some juicy attachments. And much like the goddamn Tanto that we last looked at, it can now equip the short barrel, which just gives it pure meme potential for a weapon that is exclusively tied to hipfire. Seriously, the short barrel on these hipfire styled weapons is going to be nuts. But now I want to move on to LMGs, and I have to say that we're going to be here for a minute, so get comfy. Firstly, I'll address the Godsaw and the Galilei because they are the ones that got the simplest changes between all of them on the PTS. The Galilei got a couple of buffs to its reload speed and the addition of those attachment options, which I found that when you throw on an extended magazine, for example, and build for some additional ADS accuracy, you have a really flexible quote-unquote shock trooper LMG with a big old 75 round magazine. It actually makes it one of the fastest reloading weapons with the optimal 143-750 damage model that has a magazine size over 50 rounds. Just something worth considering. The Godsaw actually got very little in the way of changes. Key things included removing the HVA benefit and keeping the hipfire benefits. It also got access to a smart feeder and the compensator in the latest version 2 patch, so that's also some additional utility and customizability being thrown the way of the weapon. It actually gives it great downtime and uptime ratios as well for the potential damage per mag, something to watch out for. But now I want to use the Beetlejuice and the Butcher here as a bit of a case study for a moment, if you'll bear with me guys. I feel like this is going to be a great opportunity to discuss the overall treatment the Vanu Sovereignty Directive weapons saw in this update. It's already been a common theme throughout the video, and it's going to continue to be so as we go forward, but this direct comparison that we have to work with here in the LMG world is going to be the key point for this conversation and sort of the tip of the spear for this whole discussion surrounding the Vanu Sovereignty Directive heat weapons. I'm going to be a little bit blunt here, so forgive me if I come across as a bit of a dick, but if you ever complained about the Beetlejuice's heat mechanics and then now celebrate the T9A Butcher getting the capacity to equip a whopping 300 round magazine via the new extended magazines attachment the weapon has access to, which, yeah, by the way, that's true, 300 rounds in one mag, your faction bias is showing. And you are, as a player, in no way, shape or form in the interest of the balance of the game being fair and being level-headed. Now, I get it. In the past, I have made criticisms about the Beetlejuice, and I will still stand by my criticisms at the time. Under the previous weapon balance, it shouldn't have been able to cool down while you were waiting for a revive or while the weapon was holstered, in my opinion. I had no issue with the infinite ammo aspect, or the fact that if you managed your engagements, you could never have to reload the weapon ever. It rewarded players who are able to time engagements and keep the battlefield flowing on their terms. Where I thought that flexibility stepped into the realms of ridiculous was when you could avoid downtime and continue engaging via switching to other loadout slots, which, by the way, was very possible. And over time, things like Scavenger have been added to the game, which means that you're able to gain free reloads on weapons via revives by having this equipped, or you can restock your primary weapon with some well-placed sidearm kills or knife kills. As a result, I've begun caring less about the Beetlejuice and its mechanics over time. The Beetlejuice as a weapon as a whole was never really overpowered. Weapons like the MSWR, the Anchor, the Gauss Sword, the T9 Carve, these are all weapons that have no issue competing against the Beetlejuice. Give a good player a Beetlejuice and a Gauss Saw, they're going to be able to achieve similar results, if not better, with the Gauss Saw. Some players refuse to believe that, but it's true. But now, the Butcher has received the ability to take a magazine size into battle that, frankly, most players are never going to need to reload before they die. And when we apply the sweeping changes to the Beetlejuice that all VS weapons have received, I have to be honest, I think the Beetlejuice has been a little hard done by here. The argument of the Beetle was OP because of its uptime is void now as long as the Butcher exists as it does, which is the essential point of my argument. Because the TR are now going to be able to achieve exactly what people were able to with the Beetlejuice, but they don't even have a heat downtime to deal with. They've just got an absurd amount of ammo to throw around. Shit, throw Scavenger on a 300 round Butcher, and that's going to be a 60 round restock every time you kill someone with a sidearm or a knife. That's 2 ARs worth of ammo for a sidearm kill with a 300 round Butcher. It's insane. The Beetle, as a contrary, only sports a 40 round magazine comparatively, with a nerfed heat cool-off rate. And yeah, the Beetle can now take attachments like forward grip and SPA to be given some edges, but it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. When you look at the Butcher maintaining a booster rate of fire, making it an incredibly deadly weapon out of the gate, and giving it the option to mount things like a compensator or a heavy barrel, you have a weapon that is capable of spitting ammo downrange for just endless amounts of time accurately. If you decide to forego the extended mags, which as I said before is quite frankly overkill for a lot of players, and mount a forward grip, and baby, you have a cracker of an LMG here. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We are about to enter an era of the Butcher going from possibly the worst of the Araxium LMGs in the game to the best by a considerable margin. But anyway, for the last few weapon categories here, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because, well, there's only so much we need to really cover here. Moving on into the shotgun world, starting off with the Chaos, there's nothing too crazy to note here. The additional attachments are nice with the Smart Choke in particular, but the heat mechanic changes here are the main point of interest, resulting in a 6-round mag with a pretty fast heat recovery delay, making this probably the nicer of the heat mechanics weapon to use right now. The Havoc has become fully automatic, which makes this thing pretty deadly as its core stats are still based off of the default shotgun, which I believe, despite the sweeping shotgun changes, make it more consistent and accurate over the other auto shoddy options, which is nice. The Brawler had its magazine size increased to 10 rounds by default with some additional changes made to its reload speed to compensate. Nothing, again, too crazy here, and it still keeps its underbarrel shotgun meme if you don't equip any other rail slots, which I just have to address for a second. Why is everyone complaining about not being able to equip an additional rail slot attachment without losing the underbarrel shotgun? Newsflash, all of the attachments available in the rail slot of the Brawler are useless with the exception of the extended magazines. But you only get an additional 2 rounds from the extended magazine attachment, and that's at the cost of removing the underbarrel shotgun, which, you guessed it, gives you 1 round that can potentially one-shot 1-kill a target in CQC. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called a fair trade-off. The other 2 shotties are either on par or have less ammunition capacity comparatively to the Brawler, and The MPL, and the Comfort Grip for that matter, do effectively nothing beneficial to how you will use this weapon in the day-to-day. The trade-off is fine, I don't see what the complaining is about. But hey, if you guys are dead set on taking a rail slot attachment to remove your underbarrel shotgun and make your weapon worse, do you, boo. Anyway, getting off that soapbox, the memeiest shotgun in the game, the Ruthford, no longer sports its strange, slow-as-hell muzzle velocity and weird spread patterns, and now sports a normal spread and projectile velocity in line with the HSG 400 when hip-fired. But when ADS'd, it fires a single explosive round dealing 250 direct and 350 indirect damage, basically turning it into a thumper alternative. Throw on the ASP heavy weaponry secondary as an NSO and you become a demo man. We'll also quickly go over the SMGs here because they've gotten some pretty meaningful changes. Across the board, the integrated high velocity ammo and forward grips were removed for all of the 3 main factions. The Tempest did keep its integrated extended magazines and gained stuff like the disruptor ammunition for attachment options, which I still have yet to do more testing for. The Shuriken got a buffed reload speed, kept the extended magazines, and now has the option to equip an additional extended magazine attachment for a total of a 50 round magazine, which is pretty nifty. The Scorpius now sports that good old heat mechanic we were talking about before, and I have to say, forget ever engaging more than one target in quick succession here like you can with some of the other SMGs in the game, because we only have an effective 20 round mag size here on this weapon. That might take the cake for being the smallest magazine size of a primary automatic weapon in the game, but I could be wrong here. If it doesn't take the win, it's damn close. The Schrodinger also got a 6 round buff, which actually isn't too bad for a weapon of this style. It just gives it a bit more killing power. But to be completely honest, guys, it isn't really worth me going over the rest of the changes here, especially considering the length of this video already. You guys can read and test in your own time, but what I will do is give you a couple of particular highlights or disappointments that I've seen from the other categories that are worth exploring. For one, the VS sniper rifle, the Parsec. What is going on here? This is a sniper rifle that now sports the heat mechanic, yes, but it sports a heat mechanic that doesn't have a heat bleed off, only sports a 4 round magazine size effective, and in addition to that, literally seems to, like, have one of the longest reload times of any sniper rifle in the game. I don't know what to say here, guys. Like, at the end of the day, at this stage, you're just better off using the phase shift. Do not bother going for the Parsec if this is how it goes to the live game. The President, aka the TR pistol, is now fully automatic, so rejoice, you DACA-loving bastards. You now have another fully automatic pistol worth using. And for the NC, the Moonshot, aka our Directive sniper rifle, now pierces 1 target at full damage capacity. So that's pretty neat. Time to go for those 6 sick collateral damage headshots. Now, guys, that is going to wrap up today's video. As I said, we did not go through all of the weapon changes, and I do apologize for that, but this video is already getting lengthy, and quite frankly, I ain't got time to go through every single one of them. And again, I'd rather you guys get on there and start testing yourselves. Let me know in the comment section down below, guys, what your thoughts are on these Directive weapon overhauls. Do you like them? Do you hate them? I feel as though the answers I'm going to get are going to very much depend on what factions people are coming from. But if you enjoyed the video, guys, consider liking it. If not, the dislike button works there as well, as much as YouTube doesn't want you to believe so. Also, consider subscribing if you're new, so you can keep up to date with all future videos on the channel. Once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all next time. Have a good one.